So welcome everyone to the nuts and bolts of the NCAA recruiting process. You are in the right place. This meeting is being recorded, so we will share the recording with all attendees after the event. And for those of you that were with us and were able to join the journey from college to pro with Eric Budarak, thank you for joining us again this evening. And welcome back to our series of College Week sessions. As I said, our next presentation is the nuts and bolts of the NCAA recruiting process. And we're very pleased to have Scott Treibly with us to present on this very important topic this evening. And like Eric, Scott has been a huge supporter of USTA Eastern and all our efforts to educate and inform our families on the college tennis pathway. So Scott, thank you so much for joining us and being with us this evening.
Well, Julie,
and before I get into Scott's bio, actually, you know what? Let me do that. And then Scott, I'm going to let you get everybody excited about the next thing we're about to see. So let me give you guys a little background on Scott. He's extremely knowledgeable and he's going to share a ton of great information with you this evening. He's been involved with the college tennis process for the past 25 years as an administrator, a coach, and a player. For the last 4 years, he's acted as the USTA Collegiate and infrastructure consultant. Prior to that, he spent 15 years with the IMG Academy as a coach and a college placement director. Treibly was also an assistant coach at Texas A&M University as part of their 3 Big 12 championships and a number 4 national ranking. He also played at the University of New Mexico and Kentucky, participated in the NCAA team and individual championships. And Scott, I think, knows every college coach in the entire country. He has a personal relationship with all of them. He's an amazing, valuable resource for us at Eastern, for tennis players and parents across the country. And again, Scott, thank you for being with us. I'm going to let you kick off your session, but just thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thanks, Julie, and thanks for that great introduction. Thanks, Elena. Thanks, Gustavo, and thanks, USTA Eastern. Really been great being partners with you over the years and just all the great things that the Eastern section does for college tennis. I think this week that you guys are doing with the live streaming tournament, Eric Budarak kicking it off before me, these are valuable things that parents, students, and coaches need. I have had the benefit of being in the college space for most of my life and career. I played it, I coached it, and I've administered it. So I've seen all the different paths that families have taken over the years. Believe that this is a 100-hour process when you really add up the hours that you need to put into recruiting in high school. It's never too early to get started once you hit that sort of 9th grade year. We have some really great things that we're going to do tonight. We're hoping to show a video of the NCAA championships. I'm a part of the USTA National Campus Collegiate team, and we hosted the NCAA Division I in May. We were fortunate to host the tournament, and then we were lucky enough to sell out and probably could have sold an extra 500 tickets. So we have a pretty fun video to get going with. And then I'm going to go through some slides to really take you through the 10 steps that can be important in this recruiting process. And again, I don't believe that anybody should go about this process alone. You need to put together a team. You know, you see these professionals out there on the tour and they've got their masseuse, their coach, their agent. Well, in the college process, you've got your coach, your parent, maybe your guidance counselor. There's even some good resources with services out there. So anyway, here to answer any questions and obviously present you kind of the pathway.
You got it, you own it all, you got it.
Majestic championship final for the #1 team in the nation, the Baylor Bears. The Pepperdine Waves are waves no more. They are tidal waves, as they have just produced one of the greatest upsets in NCAA women's tennis history.
You got it. You own it all.
Wow!
Don't lose it. Don't
The Texas Longhorns are the NCAA champions.
This is not a scientific word, but the juju of this team was very good, and I felt like one way or the other we'd get over the line today.
The Texas women, their 3rd national championship. We're going to see this same squad for a while. Wow! You could not write a script any better. Sometimes the good guys do win.
Seeing people develop and get better, that's what it's all about. The championships, are great, and we have that, but the relationships are what really matter. By doing that, you end up getting a lot more, and you end up developing, some champions along the way, whether they win on the court or not.
So I don't know about everybody else, but that's pretty inspiring, just to see what goes on and what goes into Division I NCAA tennis, and certainly exciting to see Texas and Florida win, and, to have a packed house, and I would just start this presentation by telling everybody that there's a place for everybody out there. There's a college for everybody, and tennis as a team sport is the most incredible thing. And this journey that you're on in junior tennis, while it can have its ups and downs, and sometimes you can question it, there is a pot of gold or a pot of silver at the end of the rainbow. And, having teammates and a coach while you're in college, it's an incredible thing. And there's thousands of colleges. And I think that it's important that everyone knows that, sometimes we get caught in our box of these 6 or these 8, and working with, parents and students and coaches over the years, they start with, this is the school I need to go to. And once they start visiting and talking with coaches, it changes, because you open your eyes to new frontiers, and it's really quite a beautiful thing. So this is slide number 1. When you play doubles, I highly suggest that be your ready position, and you'll be in pretty good shape. And going over to slide number 2, just an overall on divisions. There obviously is Division I, which offers athletic scholarships, Division II athletic scholarships, and then at the Division III level, I think most people would know that there are not athletic scholarships, but you do have the ability to get academic scholarship based on your SAT and your transcripts. And even at the Division II and Division I level, sometimes once you get past those big schools with the 4.5 on the men's side and the 8 scholarships on the women's side, if a school's not fully funded, you have the ability to get maybe some athletic money and also stack it with academic money. Hofstra is a great example in Long Island, Division I, and a lot of times I've seen the coaches there on both the men's and women's side give a little bit of athletic money, and then you earn a little bit money through academics. One thing, and we'll go over this a little bit more in one of the slides, is that you go through this thing called an early read kind of after your junior year, and that's when coaches can kind of look at your transcript and see if you're going to be able to get admitted. Sometimes they can tell whether you'd be able to qualify for money, and sometimes you have to wait until you've gone through the admissions process. Name, image, and likeness. Look, this is sort of the new world we're living in. And, the NCAA has probably changed forever. I would say that this is going to affect certain individuals. You're going to see it at what we just saw in that video of the Texases and the Florida Gators, where, they have the ability to market themselves through the brands of themselves and certainly the brands that they're playing for. There's a lot of questions out there right now, but the bottom line is that student athletes, if they have a really good YouTube following or Instagram account or TikTok or what have you, you are allowed to monetize on that. And obviously this comes into play in football and basketball a lot, but there will be some cases where tennis, it is in fact a factor, but I wouldn't get too involved in this at this point, given, if you're trying to go to a medium Division I, Division II, Division III. So as I said in the open, this is a 100-hour project. It does start with kind of making a list. Once you make a list, you're creating emails. You're trying to stay in touch with these coaches in one way or the other. Obviously, email is becoming a thing of the past, but it's a good opening. And we can talk about that in future slides. But you want to have a little checklist, kind of depending on if you're a freshman or sophomore, maybe you don't have a weekly checklist. But once you get to be a junior or senior, you want to be spending time weekly on this process, staying in touch with coaches, researching universities, taking visits. Sometimes you have to chase an SAT, ACT score because a certain school you want to go to. So that's why knowing what you're trying to do as a freshman and sophomore affects not only what you're doing from a tennis standpoint, but what classes you need to take and how you need to strategize on the SAT, ACT. So this is the NCAA Eligibility Center, and I would say that if you are becoming a junior in high school, that you need to go in and sign up for the Eligibility Center. It takes about 25 minutes. There's a small fee for it, and this will help with. So there's an Eligibility Center, which is based on your GPA and the core classes you've taken in high school, and there's an amateurism piece. Obviously, in speaking with this name, image, and likeness, there could be some differences now in the coming years, but certainly the eligibility piece with what your grades are and what your core classes are, what you've received on your SAT or ACT, is still going to be important. This $10,000 prize money piece has been allowed, and it certainly will be allowed in the future. Again, that maybe is if there's some of these small prize money tournaments that a high school player is playing. I always believe that whatever you're doing, it's always good to check in with your coach or a college coach and just make sure that, hey, this is what I'm up to. Is this okay? So grades. And I think it's real important for everybody to realize that all 4 years count with your GPA. And, I've had over and over again, students come to me in their 12th grade year and say, hey, it's November and I've got a 4.0. Well, they had a 4.0 that semester in their senior year, but they had a 3.0 the other 3 years. And while the difficult courses that you're taking in your maybe 10, 11, and 12th grade year, and sometimes an honors or an AP, those do carry a little more weight with the admissions department. A C your freshman year still is a C your freshman year. Now, it would get overlooked a little more than if you were a senior, because it's certainly been 3 or 4 years, and certainly everyone's entitled to a little, one grade that's not perfect. But again, getting off to a really good start that freshman year, getting a good GPA, it's so much easier to maintain a really good GPA. And these days, when you have places like NYU with 125,000 applications, it's competitive. You do want to have the highest GPA. You want to try and take the most difficult courses you possibly can. You hear this word called rigor. Rigor is very, very important when you discuss admissions. Again, if you're trying to go to the top schools, they want to know that you've taken the most difficult classes at your school. And while we don't class rank really much these days, they have an indicator of telling whether you're top 10 or top 1/3 in their class, in your class. The financial aid and scholarship piece, listen, we went over the little bit of the Division I, II, III, what sort of scholarships look like. Again, there is scholarship money out there, athletically, certainly in Division I and Division II. It may not be a full scholarship, but certainly places award monies. And then I mentioned the academic piece. There's also grants that you can find. I highly suggest going to the College Board. There's a section on this. and you can kind of, weed it out. There's thousands of different opportunities to get grants for lots of different purposes. The FAFSA is certainly the federal student aid. And, look, if it all depends on how much mom and dad make. And if they make an incredibly good income, generally you do not qualify. But if you think that it's something that you could and do a little bit of research on it, October the 1st of the senior year is become the new opening date. And I highly suggest the sooner you get that completed, the better, because they do hand money out, from the time, starting from the time when you apply. So the earlier you apply, the more likely there's money there. SAT, ACT. Well, there's a couple things to talk about when it comes to the SAT and the ACT. First of all, which test should you take? And I kind of feel like you should take both. Test yourself, learn about this. SAT tends to be a little bit more on the side of English. If you have a strong vocabulary, you may side more on SAT. ACT has a science section, and that the SAT doesn't. So in terms of speed and whether they count for certain points, that's become a lot more equal. But in terms of the style, I think it's important to see how you would fare on both. If you have the time and you've started early enough in your high school career, you would want to take a practice test of each, see which one you do the best on, and then go after it. I suggest you take this test 3 times at least. You generally are going to be able to super score definitely on the SAT, in a lot of cases on the ACT, and give yourself that best chance. I don't see many people out there one and done. I've seen kids get even into the 1400s and say, man, I got to get past this. I got to get past the 1500 threshold. So I think we're always chasing something and always chasing a little bit more. And we know it's not a shoe-in these days. So that would be my sort of advice. And if you really want to perform well, this is another 80, 90, 100 hours of preparation. Again, spread out over a few years. But if your school offers a class, a program, private tutoring, the services, look into all these things and judge where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do, because it really can make a difference. And really the SAT, ACT scores have gone up at all schools that are solid and good academically. It's gotten a lot more competitive. While the international market may be a little bit down right now with some of the COVID stuff, of course we know that's been a very big market, and just whether it's athlete or no athlete, there's folks all over the world that are vying for these spots. In terms of whether a school is test optional or not, this has become a little bit more popular in recent years, and then COVID forced everyone to kind of be maybe more schools to be test optional because they weren't sure. I would simply say that you want to take this test and do as well as you possibly can, and it can only help you. There are some cases where schools have been test optional for years and they'll stay test optional. Bowdoin College in Maine has been a test optional school before COVID. They'll stay a test optional school, but some of these places have gone back and forth and wavered. I think it's important to take this and let it help you. A coach will tell you, hey, we're test optional, we won't turn that in, or hey, we're test optional, but we will turn this in because it can help you. So again, do not think that you can avoid this. If in a certain case or two, you can. But again, if you're trying to go to the best schools in the country, you need to take one of these tests. College list. Look, this is where it all begins. You're of course going to do SAT, ACT prep your freshman, sophomore year, and then try to take it your beginning of your junior year. But along the way, you want to be trying to get together a list. I highly suggest, until you get to that senior year, that fall, where you're going to be down to 4 to 6 schools. I love a list of 25 schools where you're looking at large school, small school, urban, rural, East Coast, West Coast, North, South, and just give yourself a look at all these places. And there's ways to research for these lists. Obviously, like I said, having a team is great so that you can take in some information and some insight from people that have been through it or understand it. Tennis recruiting, UTR, niche, Naviance, USTA. There's a lot of resources out there that you can simply use the internet to get some of those resources. A list that's made the sophomore year will, of course, change. But I say, please have an open book. These days, they've made the virtual tours of campuses and athletic facilities have become, obviously, you can get them a lot easier, and you can get access to these places without actually having to go to their campuses. That's not to say that I don't think you shouldn't not go on campus tours, but again, it gives you exposure to different places all over the country, and you can learn something from every school. You can learn something from every coach. Writing coaches is, I think, first we talk about the timing of it. I guess a lot of it depends on where you are with your results, where you are with SAT, ACT, and then of course where you are in general. But I say your junior year, going into your junior year, sending some emails to coaches in the fall is a good idea. I think it's important to be careful because in September, October, they're still working on their class for that year. But getting on their radar can be great, and you may want to take some trips. In September, October, it's great to get on college campuses, and maybe it's an unofficial visit and you do it on your own with your family while you're at a tournament, or hey, there's a college around the corner we want to go see. And then throughout the year, you've got to find ways to stay in touch with these coaches. Again, I would say it starts as an email, and then it quickly becomes a text message, or it could become social media. There are still phone calls. Obviously, we have Zoom. So these are lots of the different sort of channels that you'll use. And again, I would say that emailing is sort of early on, and also remember that the prospective student athlete needs to send these emails, not mom and dad, not the coach, not the service. You are the CEO of your future and need to send these emails. Now, maybe your coach knows a couple of these coaches and has to give them a little nudge and say, hey, Scott's doing real well, and please, you need to take a look at him, or your parents maybe have a connection, or you have a service that's helping you. Yes, maybe after you've made a couple inquiries with emails or text and you haven't heard back. Also, sometimes when you don't hear back, it's a nice way of saying no. So make sure that when you're looking at your list, yes, you want to have some schools that are high reaching, and the worst part is you send an email and you don't get a response, but it's important to be realistic and to have a balanced list, and that's why starting early is great. The college video it's become more important. And quite honestly, this streaming week that's going on is the future, because, coaches have learned to recruit without having to travel around the country. Yes, they will travel around the country, and they loved it on June 1 when they could finally get out. But this video is important. I would say start with a snapshot first. And what I mean by that is that you're going to, shoot 30 seconds of some ground strokes, 15 seconds of volleys and an overhead, and then play 25 points with somebody equal level. You want to start and stop the tape. You want the camera behind the server. And we're happy to, if you all have more questions on this, to answer those questions, but this should be a 3-minute tape. As you can see by this one, there's a few, there's a little bit of a small bio for this particular Josh McKenzie. There's contact information. Obviously, it gives you kind of class of. It's been a while since he actually went to college, but I always pulled this one out because he wore a coat and tie, which I'm not suggesting you need to do, but it was somebody that really went out of his way to put together a good video. Truthfully, this is not the NBA Finals. Does not need to be a highlight reel, but it does need to be a short tape. Coach one time said, you get 1 minute to kind of, I'm going to look at this for 1 minute, and if I like it, I'll keep watching. And then if, of course, a coach shows more and more interest, they're going to say, hey, I'd like to see a whole match tape. And that's where you just put the camera up or have someone film an entire set, and you send it to them, and they can see you picking up balls and your body language and all that different stuff. But really early on, when we're sending this out to a number of coaches, we want to make sure that this is short, sweet. And remember, these coaches are operating their business out of their pocket because they're on the court a lot. They're in a van. They're traveling. Yeah, they're in the office some, but they're having to obviously do some things on the fly. And we want to do as much to make their life easy as possible. So results. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes it does become black and white. Hey, I'm this ranking, I'm this UTR, I'm this ITF. I will say that results versus ranking, at the end of the day, the coaches are going to look at the results, in line by line, like, hey, wow, Scott played this person with 7-6, 7-5. Wow, they played the number one seed to 3 sets. And obviously rankings are kind of reflecting of that, but and coaches will look back over 2 and 3 years, and they want to see what your body of work is, but they also want to know what you've done lately and how you're trending and that type of thing. So, the summer between your junior and senior year is big. But look, if you're doing well from freshman year and you have a couple bad tournaments or an injury or something like that, I mean, it's not the end of the world. And coaches know that these things happen. And again, I just think transparent communication is important. Obviously, again, go back and talk to your team, have a strategy for how you are communicating with coaches if you're missing a tournament or you have an injury or something like that. But again, this is sport. These things happen. And I would say that they do look at all these that we're looking at here as the tennis recruiting, the USTA, ITF, UTR. Obviously, for this audience, I think we'd probably be talking about TR, USTA, UTR, and they would look at all of them. Campus visits changed a lot over the last 18 months, but we're getting back to it. I've had, I know a lot of people that have been on campuses this summer, and it's a little bit back to normal. Coaches walking them around. Campus visit tours are back up and going. So I'd like to say that starting this fall will be 80% normal. Maybe some things have changed forever. And, again, in some cases, maybe you don't have to visit quite as much. I would not go to a school without physically seeing it. And I even know people that go back multiple times if it's, somewhat regionally based. Again, spending an extra day or weekend or something on your future when this is a 4-year decision is important. Again, the more time you can spend with a coach or a team, learn from what former players think or alumni or even professors. I think these are all important things you can get out of these visits. And, again, taking 3 to 5 is great. I mean, but if you can start early, maybe you can take 8 or 10 visits, and then you can compare and contrast and say, gosh, this school is in the city. I really want more green grass, or, wow, this is beautiful, but it was a bit of a rural, not much of a town. I want a little more action. You can kind of go back and forth with it. Most people here from the Northeast, the great thing is that these schools are right there in your neighborhood. You can get to probably 300 schools within 3 to 4 hours. And so take advantage of it. Applications and admissions. Look, if you're going to go to Florida or Texas, you need to be a good student. But if the coach is trying to help you, if the coach is going to help you get in, obviously there's some relief there. But I'd say after the top 20 that, SEC or something like that, this applications, admissions is very important. And everybody has to fill out an application no matter where you go. And, everyone needs to write an essay for the most part. So, and really it's multiple essays. I would say that the common application is become pretty much a total resource for applications. There's still, you're going to see your SUNYs and your UCs and some of the systems and states that may have their own applications, and can be some stray schools that you may just apply. But I mean, I think there's over 500 schools now as a part of the Common App. Columbia and the Ivies are in there. So yeah, this is definitely going to be your resource. It's a good resource. Go and get a username, password, log in, 6 sections. You need to fill it out. Highly suggest, again, make sure you get help. I mean, every great writer's got a good editor. So get help with these essays. Of course, you're writing them, but you're going to be writing multiple essays, chances are. And I suggest that the summer between your junior and senior year, you start writing the main essays, because the senior year is so busy and you're potentially going to have to write some last minute essays. You don't know whether you're doing an early decision, an early action, a regular decision. So you really want to be ready. You also want to have the application filled out. This is not as time consuming, but still, if you're doing a good job, it takes time. And, there is a section with extracurriculars. Just because you're a tennis player doesn't mean that you shouldn't fill out that portion and have been involved over the years. Of course, they understand you're a tennis player and that that's taken up a lot of your time. That doesn't mean you can't do some community service hours and some volunteer work. And, in terms of your essay, Julie and I were talking before, and she said, yeah, someone wrote their essay about tennis. And I would say, listen, I wouldn't write your main essay about tennis, unless it's something that's, really was kind of life altering, or just, something that really turned, but saying that you grew up playing tennis, working hard, and going to tournaments, it's great. And I know it's not easy, but it doesn't make you stand out. Again, you have guidance counselors at your school. Highly suggest you get in touch with them and discuss this stuff with them. And also who could help you with any type of editing. Moms and dads read this stuff too. But again, you are the CEO of your future, and you're writing this. And this is the admissions person's chance to get to know you. Coaches get to know you through the recruiting process. The admissions folks, they don't get to know you on a personal basis, kind of like this. So pay attention, really seek out help if you can. So there's our 10 steps. Julie, I know we had some questions. And so if I didn't cover some of the questions in the 10 steps, happy to take questions if someone raises their hand, what have you. Again, if someone has a follow-up question, happy to take an email, set up a call, or reply to your email with anything, in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And this is a great website right here for all of you watching and listening. So if you haven't been to usta.com/college, definitely check it out. There's a lot of really good information on here, including, you have the NCAA College Student Bound Athlete Guide, which I don't think the one for 2021, 2022 is out yet. It usually comes out late July, early August. But this is a great resource, this website right here. And you can actually learn about other showcases that are going on in the country as well. So other places where you can go get your signed up for college recruiting events in the US. So yeah, like Scott said, we did collect a bunch of questions in advance through the registration portal from a lot of our participants. So we're going to go ahead and get to those, but we do want to keep this a very open, interactive process. Okay, so I want everyone to feel like they're going to be able to get their questions answered while we have Scott with us this evening. So please use the Q&A, raise your hand. Elena and Gustavo are watching that so we can get your questions answered tonight. So I'm going to start with one, and then I see one came in the chat, but let me start with this one. So is there, if you could please discuss the rules for taking a gap year between senior year of high school and college, specifically the differences between what's allowed for Division I and Division III players, and how the rules have changed due to COVID.
Well, I don't know that when it comes to the gap year and the 6-month rule in Division I that it's changed because of COVID. I think that there's a possibility that there could be a waiver that's filled out because some of these rosters have stacked up with kids taking their own gap year or delaying college for a year. But to speak to this question, Division I, you graduate high school and you are allowed a 6-month gap before you have to enter college. So that January you would have to enter school. A lot of people in other sports are allowed to take the entire 12-month year. So tennis is different. I for one would think that I prefer for this not to be a rule, but it is, and it's been in place for probably about a decade. And are there some ways around it? I mean, again, up for discussion, but that is the technical rule. With Division II and Division III, you get a full year, you get 12 months. So at Division III level, if you think that, hey, I can go to this school, but I really think that I may have a chance of going to an even better school at this strong conference or what have you, then you are allowed 12 months to take it. Now, let me just explain also what a gap year means. So in Division III, you can take a gap year, you can train all you want. I suggest you do take classes and/or try to improve your SAT, ACT. Schools do want to see that you're continuing to be academic, but you can play all the tournaments you want. It's no problem. Now, the 6-month rule. So let's say you did not enter after 6 months and you still wanted a 12-month gap year, technically the way the rule would read is, yeah, you can take a 12-month gap year in Division I, but you can't compete after 6 months. So a lot of folks, the reason they're taking the gap year is because they're trying to get results. And then here it is that I've got to shut it down. So are there waivers that can be filled out in certain circumstances? Sure. I mean, again, this is where you're talking with the coach about that.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So I see a few questions did come in here in the chat. And we have one, when does someone get officially committed or recruited to a college?
Well, of course, that just depends on the school and the recruit. At the academic level, I would say that, the Ivy Leagues get the first choice, and then you would go to your high level D3s, and based on ranking academically and athletically, that would be next in line. And that cycle starts January of your junior year, and it would go through until December of your senior year. With that early decision. I think that early decision is a big thing when you're dealing with academic institutions. You also have the early action, which is important. And then you have early decision 2, which is not everybody offers it, but a lot do. And then regular decision, which is January 1. So I would say between the January of your junior year and December of your senior year is when you're going to have the lion's share of the offers. Now, I would say when Division IIIs make their most common offers are kind of August, September. A lot of these schools will come off the clay courts and make some offers in at some point in August, September. But of course, we see it go all the way down to the wire in late October. And then, of course, I've seen kids apply to 8-10 schools and play it into the spring. I would just say that you need to take that shot at an early decision. And that's another reason why it's important to start early, because if you're going to be bound to a school, you want to have done your homework and been on multiple campuses and spoken to many coaches and know that these are places that you really, really want to go.
And I know you mentioned some big important points in there. Can you just reiterate some of those deadlines?
Yeah.
Because I think that's important to hear over again. Yeah.
I can't say enough that if you're talking about a high academic school, so an academic school ranked in the top, 25 of liberal arts or an Ivy, you're looking at early decision. That is November 1st. And you also have some options of early action, like an MIT's an early action. There's a lot of schools that have that as well, but just remember that November 1st, you want to be ready to go. Whether you use it or not, that's up to you, but your guidance counselor will be very up to date. The other thing is that you sometimes at schools need to give them 30 days or 15-day window, or at least even if it comes down to the last week, you need to have told them in advance, this is what's going on. These are the 4 or 5 schools. If you could have my transcripts prepped. And then after the early decision, so the early decision comes back in mid-December. Most would learn on their holiday around December 20th to 26th would be a little bit of a window. And so, hey, I got great news. I know where I'm going. Or, gosh, I got denied. I'm so upset. And then you would go into that regular decision pool. And again, in some cases, January 1, there's an ED2, but you would apply to ED2 and regular decisions at the same time because of deadlines. In some cases, in the summer and fall, coaches will have done a pre-read on your transcript, and they may give you an indication that, hey, this is worth doing. We really think we have a great chance of getting in. But please remember, there's no 100% here. If a coach tells you you're in, it's not 100%. So you always want to have a little bit of a backup plan.
So another question here. What guides college decisions to recruit some student athletes in their junior year rather than their senior year? And how common is that?
Well, I think that obviously they're doing both. I mean, a coach wants to have gotten to know a player and watch him play a couple times, either on a video or in live, gotten to meet them a few times. So truthfully, you really are starting in your junior year, even if it's your second semester. And then that carries over into your senior year, and whether it goes into you're finished in the fall, or right before the new year, or it goes into the spring. I mean, that just depends on the process and the strategies and the risks and that type of thing. But coaches are recruiting in the junior year for players. Again, what's the how often? I mean, once they get into their spring season, which 6 or 8 weeks, sometimes they'll recruit a little less, but certainly in January, February, and then as you get into May, June, they're on it. They're on it because again, they've got their own list too. They've got 8, 12, 15, 18 kids they're looking at, and they've got to sort of kind of decide which 3 or 4 are best for my program.
Yeah. So here's another question, a little different on this one, but are college coaches looking at recruit social media pages? How much are college coaches using those as a reference to kind of get to know the athletes a little better?
So that's an unbelievable question, and that's probably the best question tonight. And I'm just going to tell you that at USTA National, we actually did a video on our coaches looking at social media accounts, and I would say that their response to us was 50-50. But I would simply say, let's assume they're looking at your social media, and it needs to be very professional. It is not what's going on the weekends with friends. It can be, hey, I won this trophy, or I went, on vacation with my family, or I just won this academic award. But this is not the time to be fooling around with too much on social media accounts. Really, it's not a good idea in general. So I do highly recommend that it's very professional. I just know over and over again that I would say these coaches, they go to the social media, their assistant or the head coach, one of the two. There's some old school coaches out there that just don't do it, but let's not assume that. Let's assume that they are looking, and I would say yes, they are.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I know you mentioned that the initial outreach to the college coach should happen in the summer of their going into their junior year, right, in the form of an email. Do you also recommend that they send that short video introducing themselves, or is that something they should only send if the college coach asks them to?
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear on that, the writing the coaches,
Yep.
it could be in the summer or the fall of your junior year, depending on where you are result-wise,
Yep.
test score-wise. But what you really want in this email, first of all, it needs to be short. We're looking at these things on smartphones. We're living in a Twitter world. It needs to be no more than 4 lines. It's a snapshot. So Scott Treibly goes to Jericho High School. He's class of 2022. He has a UTR USTA of this. He has a GPA of this. He's taken this many AP classes. And please enjoy my video link below. Let me know what I need to do to take the next step. And I'll leave my cell phone. That's what we need to send out to 25 or 30 schools. And no matter what your level is, that's where you need to get started with it, and then put your name of your school, or your hometown, or your class in the subject, and that's how you get started. So yes, you should absolutely have a video. And in this world we live in, everyone can sit, and I don't want to say edit. We're not really trying to create a highlight reel, but we do want this to be 2 or 3 minutes of quick tape, points, hitting, bing, a bang, a boom, so that these coaches can see your strokes. Oh yeah, wow, look at that. They played a great point. Well, their serve looks good. That type of stuff. And then they're like, I'm going to write this person back. Julie, too, before you go to the next one, the other thing I would say too about writing coaches is that, and I literally was doing the panel at the USTA Eastern section a few years ago, and the coach said in the panel, if I don't respond, write me again, because I get so many emails and I could miss it. Now, sometimes it's like, oh, don't know if that person's going to help me. That happens too. But it's also, I'm getting emails from my players, emails from my administration, emails to schedule, emails for hotels, emails for vans, emails from recruits, 25 a day in the fall, maybe not as much in the spring. And so all of a sudden I'm getting 75 to 100 emails a day, and I'm on the court 4 or 5 hours. So again, it's important to be strategic. I also suggest that you send these on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, because Friday, Saturday, Sunday is either could be, hey, I'm not really looking as much at my emails, or I'm at a tournament or traveling.
Those are great points. Thank you. Do coaches prefer visiting the clay court, hard court, or winter nationals? And do they prefer if you play 18s in these level ones rather than 16s?
The clay courts, hard courts, and winter nats, play them all. If you get in, go. It's an honor to be in these tournaments. They're in nice places. Hopefully the weather's good. And, again, usually you'll find an assistant or a head coach that goes to them, and every program has a little bit different strategy. What I think is great about the winter nats is that you have the boys and girls together, whereas the other ones are separated. But again, there are schools that have the same men's and women's coach, and there's schools that don't. So doesn't matter, neither here nor there. But you want to play those tournaments, and you're definitely going to get more exposure playing the 18s. But I'm not a believer in playing up just because of it. I mean, you need to have dominated in the 16s in order to be in the 18s. I mean, play your division and it will organically all come out. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So just to kind of piggyback off of that question, obviously it's very important for players to play tournaments. How important is it for the college coach to watch them play in a tournament?
It's huge. I mean, but we've gotten away from it a little bit, and that's where, honestly, USTA Eastern is brilliant. This live streaming of a tournament, we need more of it. I know PlaySite wants to do more of it. I know the USTA National Campus. I mean, when our PlaySite's been working, it's been huge because coaches will tune in and watch. They don't have to be live all the time. But they do want to see you in a tournament environment, see how you react to pressure and what your strategy is and what your attitude's like and this, that, and the other thing. So yeah, while the snapshot video is so important, that's when we're sort of dealing with the masses. But when we get down to 4 to 6 schools, they want to have seen you play and met you multiple times. And also, I believe the mentality needs to be that we need to make it easy for the coach. So, hey, I went and visited the campus on my own and I reached out and did these types of things and, versus, hey, he's going to come watch me play, or he hasn't come in, or she hasn't come and watched me play. I mean, we've got to think that, we're recruiting them, they're not recruiting us. And then it will become, you'll be able to tell that this coach is super interested. But again, early on, if it's a school we're reaching for and we're still trying to get those results, more work we can do, the better. It's the same thing on the academic side. I would have kids provide their updated unofficial transcript in the summer so that a coach can simply just send it over to their academic liaison and get a feel for it versus having to ask and that type of thing. Provide as much of this for them as you possibly can.
That's great. So there's a ton more questions here, and I don't think we're going to have time to get to all of them. So, but I know a lot of them you have been able to touch upon, which is great. I know something was asked about how to get recruited when you attend a homeschooling private academy. Is there really a difference between players that are homeschooled versus going to regular school?
Homeschooled online, bricks and mortar. I mean, look, if you have results and you're in the system of USTA, you're going to get recruited, or they're going to be able to recruit you. I think that really comes into play more when we talk about admissions, because some schools. I mean, is brick and mortar better than online? I mean, I think it's better to be in a brick and mortar, but we also know the world we live in with tennis, that it's so difficult when you're finishing school potentially at 4:00 in the afternoon and you're getting an hour in of tennis and you could be getting in more. And look, Laurel Springs, for example, is tremendous. And we can go look at Ivy League rosters. We can look at Duke's roster. We can look at UCLA's roster, and they have Laurel Springs kids. So I think that, and in the world we've lived in for the last year and a half, I mean, homeschool online has become more and more acceptable and accepted. So, again, the key is to take the most difficult courses and to perform and to get A's, and that is how you earn your admission.
Okay, that's great. I have another one on here too. I do want to ask before we close out. If recruited by a college, when must you sign a letter of intent, and are you bound by it?
So the National Letter of Intent starts in November, and it actually goes through the entire year now. It used to be, have a week, and then, but it starts in November. There's a certain date, and then you can sign that letter of intent. Yes, and you sign, your parents sign, coach signs, the athletic director sign, and you're bound. Now if you called the school 6 months later and said that you were just so unhappy, I'm sure there's a way to undo it. But no, I mean, this is why doing your homework, taking visits, getting to know people, knowing this is your right decision is so important, because you really don't get out of these things, and you don't want to put yourself in a situation that's going to make you unhappy.
Thank you, Scott. Do you have any recommendations for our parents and athletes on the call to help them stand out on an application?
Well, I mean, in terms of standing out on an application, number one is that you've really got to focus on the essay. And, again, this is where, getting some decent guidance, having the right topic is really important. So that's number one. The rest of it's filling in data, your name and your parents' name. But then when you get to the extracurricular and the volunteer work, again, it doesn't need to be off the charts, and you certainly want to, put in what you've done, but you want these areas to be complete, and you want to look well-rounded. Now, again, if you've been a full-time tennis player and you're going to the University of Florida or something like that, it's a totally different ballgame. But if you're trying to go to a super academic school, they want well-roundedness, and so try to make an effort. And that's why being aware of this as a freshman can make a big difference.
Yep. Learning early, which is why we like to do these every year. Bring you experts in to help with this process. So 2 final questions. Are there tryouts at the colleges for prospective players? Do some college campuses still take walk-ons?
Well, there's a difference. So in terms of a tryout, I would say that, yeah, there's definitely tryouts at schools, and you could go and be one tryout in front with eight others, and maybe the coach will take you. I wouldn't count on it. And so if you're serious about playing college tennis, that's not a risk I would take, because generally, if you're in that position, the coach doesn't really know you, and you'd have to just it would have to be lightning in a bottle, in my opinion. Yes, people do make tryouts. In terms of walk-on, well, look, here's the thing. The toughest thing for a coach is to try to get you in if it's a strong academic school. And so generally they have to help and just maybe making a recommendation or what have you. If you get in on your own and you're close, well, they didn't have to do much to help you out. And there's a good chance that you could say, well, hey, I'm ranked this, and I'm super interested in your school, and I got in. And that they can change their tune pretty quickly when that's the case. Also when we're talking about Division III schools, their participation. So you look at these rosters and they're decent size. I mean, occasionally you'll see one that's 8 or 9 because for whatever reason they have a limit. But for the most part, you're looking at 11, 12, 13, or 14 on the roster. Now, my only concern with that is that I always like for people to go places where they can play. And I just get concerned that if you're going to be 9, 10, 11, or 12, when do you get to play? I mean, it could be 2 years, and that's a pretty big commitment to sit and wait for 2 years and train and practice, and before you get any real legitimate playing time when you're trying to have a career in life and trying to get a really good degree. So again, it can happen. I'm not saying it can't happen. I don't want to discourage it. I want everyone to play college tennis. I want everyone to enjoy this great experience on a team. But I also want everyone to be realistic and understand, sometimes where you start, it can determine where you'll finish. Sometimes how you're recruited will determine how your experience is. So it's very important to pay attention to that.
That's great. And Scott, finally, we've talked a lot about what they need to be doing. Is there any recommendations when reaching out to coaches that they shouldn't do?
Well, again, I just think that it just needs to be a professional. It needs to be done professionally. I mean, you need to make sure that you're rereading what you're sending. You need to make sure that it's done, and realize that this is an interview. Every time you send a text or an email, that you're being judged by the coach. They're getting to know you. They're getting to know, oh wow, they were responsive, and that was a great response. Or they didn't even sign their name, or there's no periods or commas or anything like that. I mean, we want to take every bit of communication seriously. I get asked a lot of times, what about these schools I don't have any interest in? Once you get to a certain point, if you have zero interest in a school, sometimes it's best just to say, hey, coach, at this point, I've narrowed my options. If anything changes, I'll let you know. Again, you want to handle everybody with respect, because, hey, the coach at this school knows the coach at that school. And if we just blow them off, they may say, hey, well, I can't believe you like them. They were kind of, they acted this way. Now, if you miss on some emails to schools that you've never heard of before, I mean, it's not the end of the world. You don't have to respond to every one of them. But I actually suggest that early on, you respond to everybody that's reaching out to you, and get practice. Because the more you do it, the better you become. The more emails and text messages that you send to coaches, the more comfortable you're going to feel. It's just like the more you play in front of a coach, the more comfortable you're going to feel. First time I see folks shoot videos, they get very nervous. First time I see players play in front of college coaches, they get nervous. But once they've done it a few times, you become much more comfortable.
Well, thank you, Scott. I'm going to end on that, because I think that was a great note to end on. And I'll ask Elena, Gustavo, if they have any questions before we close. But thank you so much for joining us tonight, for sharing all your knowledge and information with us and the Eastern families that are on the call. I know we'll share the recording with everyone once this session's over. Scott, do you mind if we include your email in there as well if people have other questions?
That's fine. Go right ahead.
Okay. And for those of you that are participating in the tournament, we will see you tomorrow. We have one more live webinar session this week that's going to be on Thursday with 2 college athletes. So that'll give them a chance to really learn about what to expect when you play in a college team. What's the schedule look like? What's a normal year of training look like? And all the fun things that go into that video you kicked off for us, kicked this session off for us. So again, thank you, Scott, for being here. Thank you to all our listeners for participating. And we still have a few more things in store this week. So we're excited.
Thank you all. And again, reach out if you have questions. Good luck with the week. Thank you, USTA Eastern. You guys are doing great work, and we got to keep promoting college tennis, because it's a really great medium.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your evening.
Good night.
Bye.